Yes, ma'am. Well, right during this time period, we didn't have a war going on per se, but how many men would have been in the garrison here?
There was like, it varied like 10, 15. There was never like a whole lot of men here. During the Fort Loudon period in the 1750s, they had roughly about 200 men at different times that were there. The independent company was just a little less than 100, and the provincials were a little less than 100. Over here, it was like 11, 20, 25 different times people were coming and going. We're dressed as the 3rd Legion. And back then, a legion was different from a regiment. A legion's kind of like, the way I equate it is to like the 82nd Airborne. It's got everything. Air defense, artillery, cavalry, infantry. It's got all the department arms. And so the 82nd Division can operate on its own without any other regiments. And that's that, you could be parachuted behind the enemy lines. A legion was the same way. It would have artillery, infantry, and dragoons or heavy cavalry, and they would actually operate as an independent unit. By the time the blockade, by the time this goes in 1807, they went back to the regimental system, where it's like you got an infantry regiment, artillery regiment, cavalry regiment, and then they pull from all those regiments to basically have a military operation unit together. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, there's really no war going on until 1812 when we had the actual war with the British, the second war with the British. So this time period, kind of peaceful for the most part.
What had been happening here was some of the Cherokee would come across into what's Blount County and raid and kill some of the settlers. And then they would drop back into the nation. Well, some of the folks in Blount County would come into the Cherokee Nation and they would kill, scalp, harm Cherokee. And the problem was these two different groups were not targeting the ones that did it. It was like, we'll just go to that town and kill them. And that town, they may have been peaceful. This area was owned by Hanging Maw. And Hanging Maw and a group of the headmen were actually meeting with Governor Blunt's representatives to talk about working out peace. And this guy, Colonel Beard, shows up and attacks, and he kills some of the Cherokee headmen. The representatives of Governor Blunt come burst that stop, and they get them to stop killing. And the intention is to arrest Colonel Beard and have him tried for killing Cherokee, but he gets thrown out of court and he gets off. And so Hanging Maw is wanting to establish this peace, and Blunt, fortunately at that time, and so he actually is the one that gets the United States government to build this fort to maintain the peace. And a lot of times the white history neglects the Cherokee. The Cherokee over there is the Cherokee Nation. And so they raise what's called is the Cherokee Light Horse. And the Cherokee Light Horse are the police in the Cherokee Nation. If you go out to Oklahoma today, they still have the Light Horse, which is their police. And so that actually is created here. So
just what's not commonly known is actually where you're sitting. This is a very, very important place in early American history that really doesn't get talked about a lot. A lot of negotiations, introduction of Christianity, more Christianity.
the last
widespread.
major decision here was the headmen, the Cherokee headmen came together and discussed whether allowing the missionaries and the missions to come into the Cherokee Nation, which they did. And you have Brainerd Mission, you have Spring Place, you have all these other missions that come in. And one of the things I learned at the Trail of Tears conference years ago is typically the Presbyterians, the Episcopal, the Moravians, the Methodists, and the Baptists were sending missions in here and creating churches. The thing is, if you go to Cherokee, North Carolina, or you go out to Oklahoma, there's nothing but Baptist and Methodist churches. And the reason for that is the Methodists and the Baptists would allow Cherokees to be ordained as a minister, whereas the Episcopalian, the Presbyterians, and the Moravians would not ordain a Cherokee. And so that's why there's more of the Baptist and the Methodist churches, and they would actually come in and they would set it up. And it was kind of like the Methodists or the Baptists with you want a school, you want a church, and usually they wanted the school. That was the main thing in the early part of the 1800s. The Cherokees were wanting the education. They were wanting to learn to read, write, and mathematics. And it wasn't much about saving their soul, but as time goes by the 1830s, by the removal, they've become a Christian nation. And some are still practicing the old religion, and even today.
So this tiny little place that's a pretty significant place in history. Yes. Yeah, there were several buildings here before.
There was another blockhouse just down like that one, and then there was a bigger blockhouse on down there. There's the officers' quarters. The foundation is right there. You've got on the left side of the gate, and on the right side of the gate, that's the guardhouse. And those were both two-story buildings with porches on the front. You've got, this was just a wall when it was first built, but then this becomes the big barracks after they make the factory. They double its size. The old barracks were over on that side, the left side of the fly that's there. The well is in front of this blockhouse, and the latrine is down at the end of the barracks.